Think you know the story of the god Priapus? What about a god who was cursed to be hideous while still in his mother's womb? A god condemned to a permanent, painful erection that turned his life into a hell of pus and skin rubbed raw, and who, as a sadistic cosmic joke, was made completely impotent, whose only relief from the agony came at the exact moment of his most profound humiliation, when everything would go limp just as he was about to get close. This is the story of the cruelest revenge in history, and it'll make you see the shining world of the ancient gods in a whole new, horrifying light. His body was a cruel joke of the gods. Alright, strap in. Today, we're rediving into an abyss of human suffering so deep, it'll make your own problems look like a walk in the park. Forget the executions and tortures I've told you about before. The most sadistic executioner is nature itself, or the gods, if you prefer. Today's story is about a man whose very body was a cruel, sadistic joke played by the higher powers. Let's get right to it. Picture a guy condemned to a permanent, painful erection. Yep, you heard me right. 24/7. This isn't a sign of virility, as you might think. It's a medical hell called Priapism. Blood rushes to his organ but can't leave. Just so you grasp the scale of this tragedy, we're talking a constant, dull, throbbing ache, like getting kicked in your most vulnerable spot, over and over again, without end. Every step, every movement is torture. His clothes chafe, his skin raw. Sleep is impossible. You'd think it couldn't get any worse, right? But wait, there's more. The gods, it seems, decided that mere pain wasn't enough. They decided to add a sprinkle of humiliation. Along with a permanent erection, this poor bastard was cursed with complete impotence. That's right. His member was always at battle stations, but completely useless. A rock-hard tool he could never use. A cruel, Macarius symbol of masculinity that became the symbol of his utter power. But even that, for fuck's sake, wasn't the end of it. The real cherry on top of this chitantesque cake was this. His power, his permanent erection, would vanish at one single, solitary moment. When do you think that was? You guessed it. The very instant he had a chance at intimacy. As soon as a woman was near, as soon as a flicker of hope appeared, poof. Nothing humiliating impotence. Can you even imagine that? The only relief from his constant pain came at the moment of his greatest shame. Of course, they won't tell you this in the history books, where all the kings and dukes are nothing but noble knights. But the truth is, palace chronicles are filled with these kinds of humiliating medical secrets. Now add to this picture a hideous, disproportionate appearance, crooked legs, a hunched back, a bloated face, and inside this pathetic shell lived a lecherous, insatiable mind, a mind that constantly lusted, that burned with desire, but it was trapped in a useless organ and a body that betrayed it at every turn. This wasn't just physical pain. It was daily, hourly, psychological annihilation. Constantly chafed, inflamed skin, pus sores from his clothing, and that sour, musty smell of fabric that never fully dries. He was a living paradox, forever ready and forever useless. This wasn't just a bad day or a rough patch. This was a personal hell, one that's always with you, and from which there is no escape. How a regular donkey stopped a rapist god. What's up, people? Ready for a dose of dark history that'll make your hair stand on end? Alright, buckle up. Today we're talking about how a perfectly ordinary, stubborn, long-eared donkey managed to stop a rapist god. Yeah, you heard that right. So, picture this. Another godly booze-up on Mount Olympus. Wine's flowing like a river, everyone's laughing, having a blast. In the middle of all this chaos was Hestia, goddess of the hearth, the most goddamn decent and chaste being on all of Olympus. While the others were getting plastered, she just got tired and lay down for a nap in some nearby bushes. Quiet, peaceful, bothering no one. But then, our main anti-hero enters the scene, a god named Priapus. This, just so you know, is the god of fertility, gardens, and, let's just say, uncontrollable male urges. And this horny bastard sees the sleeping, defenseless, and a brilliant idea, so he thinks, pops into his head. He tiptoes toward her like the slimiest predator, already savoring what's about to happen. He leans over her, he's just about to, and at that very moment, in the deafening silence, a roar shatters the air. A loud, piercing, heart-stopping. There was a donkey, peacefully grazing nearby, and it brayed so loudly that Priapus, out of sheer shock and stress, went completely soft, limp as a wet noodle. A complete, total, humiliating failure at the critical moment. Can you imagine? The bray wakes everyone up, absolutely all the gods, and what a sight to behold. Priapus, red as a lobster, standing over Hestia, while his divine member, which had been ready for action just a second ago, now hung there in shame. First came the snickering, then outright howls of laughter. The shame was cosmic. Him, the god of fertility, betrayed by his own junkhole because of some damn donkey. They don't teach you that in history class, my friend. After such a public humiliation, Priapus developed a pathological, searing hatred for donkeys. He couldn't even hear them bray without reliving his shame. So what did he do? He established a festival in his own honor, And what do you think was the main ritual at this festival? You guessed it. The sacrifice of donkeys. Bloody, cruel, a public spectacle. Priests would drag out the poor animal, slit its throat right on the altar, and the warm blood would drench the stone. The smell of fresh blood and animal terror mixed with the smell of wine. And all of this in memory of a case of divine limp dick. So yeah, an ordinary donkey didn't just save a goddess. It gave one of the gods such a profound psychological trauma for all eternity that he took his revenge on an entire species. And that is the dark story of how one loud hee-haw cost thousands of donkeys their lives. That's just how it is. The cruelest revenge, alright? Buckle up. Today we're talking about revenge. Not some petty bullshit like keying a car or spreading rumors. No. We are diving into the blackest, most sophisticated cruelty the mind can possibly conjure. Revenge aimed at someone who hadn't even taken their first breath. This whole filthy story started with a goddamn apple. Yet that golden apple, the one inscribed to the fairest, the three top goddesses of Olympus, Hera, Athena, and Aphrodite were at each other's throats over it. They appointed a mortal kid named Paris to be the judge, and he, without much thought, gave the prize to Aphrodite. Seemed like a simple beauty pageant, right? A little spat, then move on. But hold on, we're talking about gods here. And their grudges, like a fine wine, only get more bitter with time. Hera, queen of the gods and wife of Zeus, was absolutely livid. Her, the most powerful of them all, beaten by some upstart goddess of love. So she decided to hit where it hurt the most. At that moment, Aphrodite was pregnant. And this, my friend, is where things get truly twisted. The kind of stuff they definitely cut from the glossy books of myths. Hera didn't aim her curse at her rival. She aimed it at the helpless fetus in her womb. Can you even fathom that level of malice? To curse someone who hasn't even been born yet. And this wasn't just any old curse. Oh no, this was a fucking package deal of lifelong humiliation. First, ugliness. When the boy was born, his own mother, the goddess of beauty, recoiled from him in horror. He was a dwarf with crooked legs, a bloated stomach, and a repulsive, hideous face. They just threw him out of Olympus like a defective product, so he wouldn't spoil the perfect picture. But that's not all. That would have been too simple. Hera endowed him with an insatiable, animalistic lust. He was meant to desire everything that moved, 24/7, to feel that unquenchable fire in his blood, a burning that drives you mad. And now for the cherry on top of this cake of pain and humiliation, along with eternal lust, she gifted him with complete impotence. Just think about that mechanism. An eternal all-consuming thirst that you can never, under any circumstances, quench. An endless desire that ends, every single time, in utter failure and shame. He became a living joke, a walking symbol of male inadequacy. His name was Priapus, and his entire life was one long, continuous torment. Eternal desire and eternal humiliation. And all of it because of a stupid argument over whose face was prettier. Now that is what I call revenge. Not just killing your enemy, but making their child suffer every single second of their existence. Cruelty. Even the gods hated him, all right, people. Buckle up. Today we re-diving into a level of filth that makes even the most messed up gods on Olympus look like cuddly kittens. We're talking about a guy who was hated from the first second of his life. Not for some betrayal, not for some heinous shit he pulled. He was hated just for existing, for the way he looked. So, picture this. Shining Olympus, the eternal party, nectar flowing like water. Everyone around is a god or goddess with a perfect body, a chiseled face, like they're straight off the cover of ancient Greek Vogue. And in this Instagram for immortals, Hera herself, the queen of the gods, gives birth to a child. A cause for celebration, right? Yeah. Right, how comes? Well, let's just say not the most handsome baby. Wrinkled, frail, with crooked little legs. Just so you understand the scale of the tragedy for these glamorous divinities. They looked at him with the same disgust as if someone had taken a dump on a plate of divine ambrosia. No sympathy, no maternal love. Just a cold, repulsed. What is this monstrosity? Can you imagine your own mother looking at you like you're a cockroach that just scurried across her kitchen floor? And what do? Try to help, to heal him? Nope, they just pick him up like a bag of trash and throw him out, off a limb, straight from the top of the sacred mountain. They won't tell you this in the history books, where everything is sanitized and pretty. They didn't just exile him, they threw out a newborn baby. Just picture the fall. A tiny body, tumbling 4 miles through the open air, coming down with a sickening thud on some random hillside. Not onto a soft, grassy meadow, but into the dirt, the rocks, and why not, a fresh pile of sheep shit. He lay there, a broken, filthy, wailing bundle of pain and humiliation. Garbage, godly garbage. And who found him? Not gods, but ordinary mortal shepherds. Simple folk who, unlike his oh-so-perfect family, weren't horrified by what they saw. They scooped up that mangled, grimy little scrap of a thing, took him in, and raised him as their own. The kid's name, But hold on, that's not the whole story. Think he just quietly accepted his lot, grateful to be alive? Oh, hell no. Every swing of the hammer in his future forge would be an echo of that fall. every spark a reminder of his mother's icy stare. This isn't a story about a victim. This is the story of a Rikaniga revenge, as hot and twisted as the very forge where he would hammer out his own greatness and make Olympus tremble. But that's a story for another time. An endless cycle of lust and humiliation. Alright, strap yourselves in. If you thought our hero, after being dragged through hell and back, was going to find some magical cure or inner peace, think again. This isn't a story with a happy ending. This is a story about a man pushed to the brink who decides to dive headfirst into the abyss, only to find out there's no bottom to hit. He never found a cure for his curse. Picture it. You're an outcast, a pariah. People shrink away from you like you're carrying the plague. Where do you go? That's right, you go to the other freaks, the ones who don't give a damn about your afflictions. And find them he did. In the darkest, most savage depths of the forest, he stumbled upon the court of the god Pan. And here's where you need to pay attention. This is the part they leave out of your sanitized mythology books. Pan isn't some cherubic flute-tooting shepherd with cute little goat legs. Pan is primal terror. He's raw, untamed, lust, stripped of all romance. He's filth, sweat, animal instinct, and a complete and utter disregard for morality. And his Satan, they're just walking, leering embodiments of depravity and violence. And our hero, he dove into this world, days and nights blurred into one endless woodland orgy. But don't you dare picture anything beautiful or erotic. Picture sticky grime under the fingernails, the acrid stench of sour wine, sweat, and goat fur. Picture the rough, bestial cackles of the satyrs, who couldn't care less about his pain. For him, this wasn't about pleasure. It was a desperate attempt to numb the festering rot inside his soul, to lose himself in other bodies, to feel anything other than the crushing weight of his own curse. But then comes the apex of this whole nightmare. The moment it seems he's finally about to, for just a second, become part of this primal chaos. He reaches for a nymph, a satyr. No longer matters. The tension mounts, bodies entwine, breath catch, and at the last possible second, right on the precipice of release, nothing but first strikes again. Always, at the absolute peak, the most humiliating moment imaginable. And what follows? Mocking laughter, fingers pointing in his direction. He's alone again, surrounded by this debauched carnival of life, yet utterly, completely alone. Humiliated, again, broken, again. This was his own personal, endless hell. Not fire and brimstone, not boiling cauldrons, but an eternal cycle of arousal, hope, and spectacular, public failure. Every single day, he would wake up only to try again, and to fail again in the exact same way, on and on, for all eternity. Can you imagine a more exquisite torture? Because I sure as hell can't.